It's all yours, John.
Okay. I'm sorry, wait a sec. Okay. Good evening, I'm John Cosgrove, Chair of the Water and Sewer Rate Structure Committee. This open meeting of the Water and Sewer Rate Structure Committee is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12th, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. The governor's executive order is still in effect until June 15th, 2021. The governor's order suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. While the executive order is in effect, all public bodies are allowed to participate remotely. For this meeting, the committee is convening by Zoom. It's posted on the town's website, identifying how the public may join. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will not feature public comment. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that all attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that other folks may be able to see you and that you take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. Please remember to mute your phone or computer when you're not speaking. Please remember to speak clearly and in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. Finally, each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by roll call vote. We're now going to turn to the first item on the agenda.
Mr. Chairman, we did not receive, Catherine nor I received any corrections to the minutes from the March 18th meeting, so it would be appropriate for someone to move the acceptance.
Move to accept the minutes of the meeting from June.
We need a
I'll
second.
second.
Roll call vote, Mr. Chairman.
Aye.
Harold,
Aye.
Stephen,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
4-0. Mr. Chairman, we invited Roger McDonald to our meeting. Roger's the director of MIS for the town of Needham. In recent weeks, there's been issues with hacking and problems with people getting into governmental systems and some water systems. And in anticipation that there might have been some questions today, I had asked Roger if he could make himself available to talk a little about what Needham does and if you have any questions that he might be able to answer. So with that, I'd turn it over to Roger McDonald.
Thank you, Dave. Thanks everyone for having me here. The town, we really, you know, we do a lot of work within our network for security. We have a lot of, we do a lot of work with our switches, IP addressing, segmenting out different buildings, really working hard on that. We're using firewalls. We're using, you know, email filtering for all sorts of things. We're also moving forward with the project this year specific to monitoring. We're really turning ourselves into a zero trust networking organization. So basically every item that's on our network has a, you know, we know it's supposed to be on our network. We'll be doing 2 forms of authentication sometime over the next 3 to 4 months. We had it a little while in the past, but we've changed our technology for that. Specific to, we like I said a little earlier, we do segment, or we're working on segmenting our network, which really means just sort of breaking it up by buildings, or at least maybe not necessarily buildings, but at least work use. So for example, we, you know, the public safety is its own segmented area. The primary business network is its own segmented area. Specific to water and sewer, the SCADA network is separated out, segmented out as well. And so the operators there have no access to the internet. They can't use their browsers to get out to the internet. Their hardware does do updating. So there is some access through the updates to get out to the internet to bring down those updates to the hardware. But specific to that, they're really very segmented off from us. They have their own firewalls. We have limited, we have some minor access, limited access to get over there. We do a lot of IP addressing through our switches to control who comes and goes within the network. So we worked pretty hard to really solidify the security within the network. We're currently working with the state through a program of training for the staff as well. That the staff are highly encouraged to take this training, where they go online, they answer they go through some training elements, and then there's questions and answers that are through it to try and to get them more aware of issues of cybersecurity. It's ongoing. The unfortunate thing with security and cybersecurity is that it is almost always reactive. So, something happens and the industry, finds a fix for it. And, we just do as much as we can with the dollars that we have to harden our network. And, I think one of the most telling examples about the fragility of networks is actually, I was recently at a webinar, and one of the slides that they had was something that was put out by Verizon, which had done an analysis last year in 2020 of suspected cyber attacks with across the communities, not just municipal governments, but private governments. It was private businesses. It was like 3,900, almost 4,000. And out of all of those incidents, 99.9% of them were what they called non-technical incidents. In other words, it had nothing to do with lack of technology supporting and protecting the network, but it had everything to do with individuals within their organizations that did something that allowed for the malicious attack, the malware, whatever it was, to actually get into the networks. So we try as hard as we can ask for money, and the town has been through town meetings, and the town meeting members have been the finance committee and technology advisory board have been very supportive of our initiatives to protect our network. But at the end of the day, it always comes down to the user and their ability to notice and be aware of what's going on. So we try really hard on that aspect as well. So that's really what we do in sort of a nutshell. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. So.
Looks like you're free to go, Roger.
All right. Thank you. Well, thanks everybody. I appreciate it. I hope everyone's doing well. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we have information to share with the committee about the MWRA's redundant tunnel. And to address that, Mr. Chair, is that you, Karis, or is that Sean?
I can start, and I think Sean can provide more specific data. But I wanted to, advise the committee that we have been given notice by the MWRA that they are working on a redundant tunnel to provide water to and through the town of Needham. And Sean, I think, can just provide some details. They're in the early phases of the project. We've gotten some notice about some survey work and drone survey work that they're doing in the area in preparation.
Yes, and just to follow up on that, so like Karis said, it is in the early stages, and they reached out to us a couple months ago. We had a meeting with them on this topic, and they're really starting a working group with the towns involved and people that are interested. So it is in early stages. There'll be many meetings and a lot more information to come. I believe projected construction at this point isn't until 2027, I believe, as of right now, but who knows if that will change, or I'm sure there'll be kind of updates and changes as we go along. But it is in early stages. They're great with their communication. When they have people working in the area or around St. Mary's, they always give us a heads up. And that's where that project is right now.
Okay. The fourth agenda item, the WMA Outlook.
So this is actually referring to the Town's Water Management Act registration that is up for renewal on the 15th of June. I also wanted to inform the committee that currently Mass DEP is looking at adding additional regulation onto our registration, where it would provide for the ability essentially for DEP to force a water restriction during drought conditions on communities that hold a registration. We are responding to that that change in process and procedure with a letter from the town's council indicating that we do not agree that they have the authority to levy this type of restriction on the town, as it's a registration and not a permit. And also, I think, challenging the process that they went through in order to implement this regulation, and that it was not in accordance with what their requirements are for this type of change. So we are filling out our 10-year registration right now, but we will be attaching a letter to it indicating that we disagree with this this requirement. It's a much more strict requirement than what we had when we were under the permit. It's a mandatory no water restriction as opposed to an odd even restriction, which is what we had before. It would be put in place if we were put in a there's different levels of the restriction depending on the category of drought that we're in. But I think for context, and Sean, you can correct me if I'm wrong, we were in a drought, a category 1 drought earlier in the year. We're now out of it, but we spent a decent portion, I believe, of last summer in some category of drought conditions. So if this were to go through, there would be an impact to our ability, to residents and commercial entities' ability to water during those periods where a drought might be in effect. So I just wanted to provide the information. We are challenging this, but I can't predict whether or not we would be successful. So I wanted to alert the committee to this change.
Yes, and if I could just follow up, Karis, you're correct. Yeah, we were in a mild drought earlier this year, early spring. We're out of that now, but you can almost, the way the last few years have gone, I mean, you can almost guarantee we will be in some sort of, some level of drought almost every summer, whether mild. You can't get, obviously it's not guaranteed, but there's a good chance we would be in some level of drought, this region, just about every summer, anywhere from mild to an emergency type situation. So they did, as a matter of fact, today send out a notice of intent to amend those regulations. So there is a hearing, an online hearing on July 7th on this topic. So DEP is moving forward or trying to move forward of this with this. As I said, they sent out this notice of intent today. I received it. So we'll be looking more at this.
Question for me. So I'm assuming that we've built in the odd even in our modeling from years past. If this does go through, then it would probably require some different modeling for the lost revenue, or is it significant enough to move the needle or not?
Depending on the phase that we're in, it could eliminate all watering, period. So before in the odd even restriction, you could water 2 days a week. You could water after certain hours of the day. So you had some capacity to run your irrigation system. And I think even hand watering in the new regulation is not allowed. So it would really limit our capacity for outdoor, or people's capacity for outdoor watering. Yeah. So we would look at the modeling for the, particularly the irrigation, the water irrigation meters specifically, where we may not have usage on it if we were to go into a drought condition and this regulation were to be in place.
And I should probably know this. Who's responsible for enforcing that?
It would be the permit holder or the registration holder, which would be
so the town. Okay.
Yes, it would. Yeah, why that would fall on water and sewer.
So I guess again, is it something from a revenue projection we should be concerned about, or?
Yes, if the most dramatic impact of this, if it was implemented with those sort of restrictions, that would clearly have an impact on revenue, and meaning, but our fixed cost would not decline, so that would suggest rate increases more that would exceed that which is normally driven by inflation. Sean, did you want to provide your superintendent update?
Yes, absolutely. Thanks, Dave. Hi, everybody. So I'll provide a few updates here. Water main flushing, hydrant flushing. Normally we do that in the spring. This year we decided we've had a couple of problems with our wells at the treatment plant, Charles River Water Treatment Plant. So we are postponing that until the fall. Flushing will be done in the fall this year. We'll do a full flush. Last fall we did dead ends, dead end flushing only for those dead end mains and dead end streets around town. So this fall, it was due to be in April, started in April. For this year, it's going to be in the fall, probably starting in late September, October, somewhere around that time. Some water main replacements. So our construction crew, the town's water and sewer DPW construction crew, actually recently replaced a 2-inch water main on Alderbrook Lane with a 6-inch water main and added a fire hydrant to that neighborhood. So we've upgraded there. Country Way, there's a second phase. We did a water main. Again, this is an in-house, the town's construction crew is we did a first phase of Country Way last fall. We replaced about 900 feet of 8-inch water main. We're going to continue that in a couple of weeks. We're right now planning on timelines, but we're looking probably late June, early July to start phase 2, which will be replacing the water main from White Pine Road down to Stratford. And that will replace that whole section that had been planned on being replaced. Central Avenue is another water main replacement. That one will be overseen by the engineering division. I was actually talking with them today. It's probably going out to bid in July, August, and construction as of now, looks to be in fall of 2021, this fall. Back to and at any time, if anyone has questions, please feel free to stop me. Town water wells. So I mentioned problems with the water wells. We had a couple of issues this spring, late winter, early spring, with 2 of our wells. We were having some VFD/motor engine issues with the pumps, and we finally so we had, for a period this spring, we had 2 wells that were down. So we were drawing mainly off of, or a fair amount off of MWRA. For a little while there, and one of our wells was up and running at the plant. This week, good news, we got one of those wells back up and running, and that's going, and we're waiting on the new motor for our well number 1. And once that comes in, we'll get that reinstalled, started back up, and hopefully, fingers crossed, everything goes smooth there, and we'll be back fully functional with all 3 wells at the treatment plant. And as far as on the sewer side, wastewater side, a new sewer station is under review. The design is under review, the Lake Drive sewer pump station. And that is due right now. Plans are construction for spring of 2022. So in FY22, but kind of late 2022. That kind of covers my updates. Does anyone have any questions or?
Thank you, Sean.
Sure.
So, Mr. Chair, I have some slides to show you all in discussion of water and sewer rates.
Dave, I don't know, something's wrong with my computer. It's kind of blank. I can hear you guys, but just so you know, I can't see anything. It's flashing up and down.
We see you.
It's an unfortunate break. I can't see you guys at all.
Are you still able to share the slides, Dave?
Yep, I am. Can people, other than the chair, can everybody see
Yes.
the sign that says water and sewer bill consumption history?
Yes, I can.
So, very
It's
good.
come back. It's come back up, Dave. I can see it too.
Very good. So first, showing an overall trend. The first thing is the committee knows a few years ago when we learned that Coca-Cola was ending its bottling operations, that was going to have an impact on the town's rates going forward, because 99% of what Coca-Cola used and contributed was at the highest rate per 100 cubic feet, which effectively provided a subsidy to residents of the town of Needham. And with our loss of Coca-Cola, and you can see these numbers, these are in 100 cubic feet, there had been a decline year after year, which was one of the factors that was impacting the gradual increase in rates. And then in fiscal 2019, the company effectively stopped operations by December of 2018. And then basically now the meter that they have is about the least amount of water one would use in a course of the year. And in FY20, they use 700 cubic feet of water. So, and this is the numbers that I was pointing to and discussing. These numbers now with Coca-Cola mean nothing going forward. And when I talk about usage and going forward in some of the other slides, I am going to be focusing only on this line and the trends in usage in primary water, which is domestic water. That's the water that enters the building or the home. And secondary water are those who have a second meter, usually used for irrigation, but there may be other reasons that folks have second meters. As folks may notice on the secondary water, there is volatility there as well, depending if it's a dry year or a wet year, but that usage has been slowly increasing for those second meters, whereas usage with the primary meter has been trending downward, and I think that's is contributed to the second meters that more folks use them, as well as improvements in construction of residential housing and water conservation efforts within the homes, as well as efforts actually taken by commercial establishments to be more fruitful, to be more restrictive in their individual water uses. Now, the importance of this primary usage number is it impacts sewer. Sewer usage has been trending down, and in part when folks adopt a second meter, that effectively reduces the amount of water that goes to the primary meter. And the primary meter is the method by which we determine billable sewer. And that is why that is one of the two primary reasons why there's been an upward pressure on sewer rates. The other, of course, was the withdrawal of Coca-Cola. And again, that number is no longer meaningful now that they are a very low contributor to the overall flow of sewage, billable sewage going into the system. So you can see the change in billable water over the 7-year period that basically is declining year over year. There's a couple spikes, and the spikes that happen tend to be driven more in the water area by irrigation use. That number there, for instance, jumping from 300 to 374 100,000 cubic feet is one of the primary factors for this significant increase. But again, then it declined, and you can see there was a decline in 2017 in irrigation use. And again, you can see year after year, the decline in billable sewer. So that is, this is the slide that we generally discuss and help model in terms of forecasting. But as everybody knows, the last year has not been a normal year. So I would like to show you something specific looking at the impact that COVID-19 has had on use. So I'm going to stop sharing that screen, and I'm going to show another screen. So are you all seeing, it shows water and sewer billed consumption, residential versus commercial. Very important distinction, excludes Coca-Cola. Those numbers have been stripped out for the history. And this is for the first 9 months of billed water and sewer use. For 2021, making the comparison for the same 9-month period in 2020, 2019, and 2018. The first thing in fiscal 2020, the first 9 months of that year, that was the normal economy. That was before the shutdown started in Massachusetts. There was a noticeable decline in usage for the last 3 months of fiscal 20, but in order to make a comparison of usage, that's why we're looking at 9 months. So 2018, you can see the domestic use. Domestic means the water used in the home. Irrigation, those are the second meters. 2018, it went from 543 to 2019, 553, and a slight increase in 2020 of 555. You'll see there was a significant jump, and we heard it from residents who first were thinking that rates must have gone up last year, but as the committee knows, rates did not go up. The select board opted to not implement the planned rate increase in FY21. Why people's bills were up is they were using more water, and they were using more water because they were home and not going to work. And in the first 9 months, comparing fiscal 2021 to 2020, great economy in 2020, first 9 months, shutdown economy, first 9 months of 21. There was a 16% increase in household use of water. And people, of course, were apparently doing more gardening and working in the yard because there was a significant increase in irrigation use, a 46% increase. Overall, residential use in the first 9 months of 21 compared to fiscal 20, it was just under a 26% increase, 25.8%. Conversely, all those numbers that we talked about in the commercial sector, we saw a decline. First, there as mentioned before, the commercial sector has taken steps over time to reduce its use through its business practices. And there have been declines in commercial use. And again, none of these numbers are reflective of Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola's use is not in here. This is all the other businesses in town. But there was, with the shutdown, you could see that there was a notable decrease in commercial use of 16.6%. And this is meaningful because, again, the commercial sector tends to find themselves having usage that's in the third and fourth steps, whereas most residents are usually in the first and second steps. Because of the higher amount of water usage, more residents were finding themselves in the third step, and then even some were getting into the fourth step. Whereas the business use, there was definitely a decline, and every gallon not used was reducing revenue at the fourth step. Now that's a 16.6% decline. It appears, however, that the commercial sector was not mindful on their irrigation use, and perhaps because some of the offices were closed, there was no one there to shut off the outdoor sprinklers or something, but they too had a significant increase in usage of 25.9%. But overall, the bottom line, comparing the first 9 months of 2021, our current year, to the first 9 months of 2020, there was a 10% decline in usage in the commercial sector. Overall for the year, though, for the first 9 months, we see that there was an 18.8% increase in usage. And again, more people home, longer periods of time, they were using their water rather than their company's water because their office or their work or for folks that actually were furloughed or laid off, no work, they were home more and they used more. And you can see this interesting first 9 months that 19 usage was up 6.7%. The first 9 months of 20 overall usage of water was down 3.9%. And that clearly was driven by the wetter summer in 2020 that reduced the amount of irrigation water that was being used by the residents. And yet there was an 18.8% increase, as I said before, in the first 9 months. On the sewer side, conversely, it also had the impact that residential sewage is up 14.7% when you compare 21 to 20. And again, people were home more, usage was up, billable sewer was up. Whereas on the commercial sector, billable sewer was down over 20%. So overall, billable sewer was up for the first 9 months of 21 compared to 20 by 6.8%. Now, overall, that should make the forecasting for rates seem better than we may have been thinking. But this table here, are folks seeing, let me pull up the next table. Sharing this table, you're seeing billable water by step. And this is for the same 7-year period. This is full fiscal years 2014 through 2020. This corresponds to the very first table that I showed you. And the but this is showing the full year. If you, as you can see, generally at step one, approximately 28, between 28 and 29% of the water gets billed at this rate. But you saw that there was that uptick in 2020, fiscal 2020. Now this is representative not of 9 months, but of 12 months. As you recall, the shutdown began in the fourth quarter of fiscal 2020, and just that one quarter had an impact. You look at the high end, the commercial use had declined, and whereas the top step usually has about a 20% of all water use being billed at the top step, it declined to 17.9%. And that's reflective of the reductions, particularly in the commercial sector. And conversely, residents were using more, and as a result, there was more water getting billed at the first step, more water getting billed at the second step. Traditionally, step two is usually around 46% of the total billable water. But as you can see, again, with more folks at home and stuff, it inched up that it was 47%. So 2020 was higher than any other year in the 7 years. And back at step one, at 30%, that was higher than any of the previous of the 7 years. Step three, which is a small step, generally it's about 5% of total use. And you can see that of the total billable use, that in fiscal 2020, it showed a slight decline of 4.8. And then, as I stated earlier, for water, 17.9%. I can tell you for the first 9 months of fiscal 21, I didn't have the first 9 months of data, which is more granular than the data that I was showing you for the first 9 months in aggregate, but by step. But so far, water use billed at step one is at 27.5%. At step two, it's 48.2%. And step three, it's 6%. But step four, 17.7%. So it's still even lower than 2020. A similar tale, you all can see the numbers. I won't read them all to you again, but the same story. You see here, step one, 31% of all the billable sewer, it was in step one, which is the lowest rate. This usually averages at 30%, and then it's at 31.7%. Step two usually averages 48%. It was 49%. Step three was slightly lower. Usually it's around 4.7%. It's 4.5, and very telling. The highest step is usually about 16.4, and it was at 14.8. I can tell you right now, sewer billed for the first 9 months is running at 13% of total billable use. Now, that's what we're seeing trending in terms of billable consumption. The other factor that we have to take into consideration in looking at rates is cost. And the practice that we have done in order to try to smooth the impact of inflation and the impact of year-to-year changes, what we do is we look at a 3-year projection of where costs are going to be. And I will pull up that table to share with you all. So first, looking here at the sewer rates, we're looking at what we estimate the final appropriated budget will be for fiscal 2022. Town meeting, of course, did vote, and there is a budget in place in 2022, but there is still subsequent actions that will be taken at the town meeting in October. And this estimate is inclusive of changes that we are anticipating that will be made in October. And we're looking at the projection based upon trending for salary and wages, which are trending about at 3.8% per year. Expenses, there are several factors driving that, not only the additional work that our water and sewer staff are doing in terms of doing repairs, but the cost of the parts and the cost of power are increasing, and they're trending at an increase of 5.35% per year. Capital, this is not the large capital projects, clearly. This is just what is operational capital that's appropriated to the operating budget, and it does things such as buying grinders and small pumps for the sewer pump stations, and that's assumed to grow at 1.1%. The MWRA on the sewer side is estimate is based upon the NWRA's guidance from a few years ago, that their goal is to have sewer budget increases of not more than 4%, and so our forecast assumes a 4% increase in the town's assessment. Now, the number for fiscal 2022 is from the MWRA for the town of Needham. That's the number that has been provided to us, and that's actually a 4.1% increase over our FY21 assessment. The reserve fund is a level dollar. That's a forecast, and that's been consistent. And debt service, the last few years, we've been reducing the debt service. That's in part was we were doing a pullback, knowing the pressures upon rates, and as well as the impact of COVID-19. So over the last couple of years, we reduced the sewer debt budget. That, of course, with the projects that are coming forth and projects that have already been approved, we do know that, and it's already built into the plan, that that the annual debt service for sewer will increase. And again, just to remind the committee, the debt service budget for sewer used to be at $1.5 million in FY20. In response to Coca-Cola, we changed our capital spending planning and reduced the debt service budget to $900,000. And then it was leveled out in 21 at 900,000. And then again, because of the pressures and because of COVID-19, we made some significant changes and reduced the debt service budget down to $610,000, as well as relied upon free cash. So with that, we also have indirect expenses. Those are the cost of benefits, administrative services that are provided to the sewer operation, and they're running about just under 3% per year, 2.9%. On the water side of the a similar forecast looking at the FY22 is reflective of the budget that's already been adopted in anticipated changes in October. Salary and wages are running slightly higher on average. It's running about 4% per year. And that's what we're seeing for our projections in 23 and 24. Expenses, although there are pressures on water expenses, particularly in the area of treatment chemicals, the cost trend hasn't been as great as sewer, where sewer is running 5.35%. expenses on the water side are running 4.4% as an outlook. Capital outlay is actually, we're assuming it's going to drop back down to 15,000 a year. The MWRA, as you can see, I have a double asterisk here. This is more difficult to forecast. And that is because we're built, unlike the formulaic approach that the MWRA uses in terms of its assessment to cities and towns, which is based upon partly your flow, partly your sewer population, and then your total population. Water is billed upon your actual usage in the prior calendar year to, preceding the fiscal year. So in other words, the assessment which we have for FY22, $1,677,000. That assessment is for the water that the town used in calendar year 2020. And we did have a sizable increase in that assessment because our water use during calendar year 2020 went up. Not entirely unexpected, in part because the water restrictions weren't in place during that year. But that assessment of $1,677,000, that's a 49.4% increase. So I have to have some sort of assumption in looking at the forecast projections. So using the mantra of the MWRA that their goal is not to have the bottom line increases of more than 4%, that's what the assumption and the projections have. But we can have dramatic swings, as you can see, a 49% increase, but we could also, in the subsequent year, if we use less water, have a 20, 30, 40, 50% drop in the assessment. And we've seen those kinds of swings. As Superintendent of Water and Sewer mentioned, we've had to rely upon the MWRA more for the first several months of calendar year 2021. Calendar year 21 will be the basis of the FY23 projections. So assuming things moderate with our water use with the MWRA, it's likely that our billable water is going to be comparable in 23, and hopefully it can decline in 24. The debt service budget is level dollar. The reserve fund is level dollar. So we're looking at increases over this time. That basically means that we need to hit a revenue target of about $6.9 million per year. Whereas the sewer system, we needed to have a projection of about $9.8 million per year. And again, to remind the committee, so that 3-year forecast is we take a blended average to determine what our revenue target should be in order to determine what rate should be. And here is that structure recap. So looking at a 3-year trending average of expenses, meaning 22, 23, and 24, we would be looking at an average expense of just under $9.8 million. Now we have some other revenue sources that come into play. There are some fixed revenues that the town receives generated through the flat fee, as well as there's a general fund contribution to the sewer operations because they include expenses to deal with the drains program, which is funded from the general fund. There's always a portion of our billed sewer that ends up being written off, and so there's an allowance of I carry 0.75% allowance for doubtful accounts. And then we go to the rounding, so that our revenue target for sewer to raise on the sewer rates would be just slightly over $9 million. And based upon the estimated volume, based upon prior to COVID of 85 million cubic feet, we should have a minimum rate of $10.57. Same exercise process. Looking at a 3-year average, our target would be just our average expenditures just under $6.9 million. We have the fixed fees that generate $571,000, so that's reduced, and then the doubtful accounts, the same thing at 0.75%, rounding issue. Billable volume prior to COVID-19, looking at 122 million cubic feet of water, which would suggest an average rate of $5.20 per thousand. So originally, we were looking at rates that would have been in effect for and I'm going to pull that screen up right now, folks. We would have been looking at, here's our rate history, 2016 through 2020. As the committee knows, it was opted not to increase the rates in 21. The rates were scheduled to increase in the 2.7% area, but we kept it flat. Right now, based upon all that I showed you, that would suggest rates in this area going at 318 to 336 at step 1, and at top step going from 524 to 553. In the case of sewer, you would be looking at the bottom step for $9.08 going to $9.61, and the top step going from $11.79 to $12.48. And again, to remind the committee members, the sewer rate, in order the minimum sewer rate to ensure that you're covering cost would have to be at $10.57. So, and because of that decline in consumption by the commercial sector, we weren't generating these monies, the 1159 and the 1081. We were generating more at the 908 and the 1002, which are both under the $10.57 level. Hence why the town relied upon, when we appropriated the budget this year, going for fiscal 22, retained earnings, because we are anticipating that revenue will not come in at the level that was planned upon. Similar thing with water. We need to have a minimum rate of $5.20. The first 3 steps are not at that level. However, we do have water, a portion of our water. At times, it can be as much as 25%. In other times, in wet years, it can be in the 10% range, but that water is billed at a higher rate. So that is why we're able to provide a greater subsidy. Now, I talked a lot about the consumption. We know about the Coca-Cola impact. We know about the cost. What we are not clear on is how much things may change now that folks are going back to work, and what that's going to do in terms of water use, both in the residential and also in the commercial sector. I've already spoke with the town manager and would give the select board an update. I think there's enough unknowns right now to suggest that we should hold off on looking at any change to the rates and take up the topic and plan on a hearing in October. That will give us the benefit of seeing certainly the billable water over the last quarter of fiscal 21, as well as the activity, particularly because we bill commercials on a monthly basis. We'll have real-time data on the commercial activities for the months of July and August. And in September, we can see, do we need to stick with the original plan for rates, or can we modify that rate recommendation? Or if trends continue as they have been for the first 9 months, I'm hoping they will not be that. I would assume it would not be that, but if that trend continues, that suggests problems that we would have to relook at our approach to the rate structure. So because of those reasons, I think that it would be good for the committee to meet in September in order to relook at the data and to see how we can modify the rate recommendations and present to the select board. And then, of course, a topic that Karis touched upon, which clearly won't be resolved by September, but we'll certainly know if something draconian is coming from DEP that may also have an impact. And that was one of the questions John had asked, is could that have a longer term impact? And that clearly would have an impact on the water side that would impact rates. So I know that was lengthy, but I wanted to walk through the steps and everything and have you see what you would normally be seeing and discussing before I shared with you that the committee does not need to make a rate recommendation right now, and that I think it's prudent that we look at that in September. So question.
So, yeah, so David, if I could just say two things. Number one, when I look at my own home water bill and see the family at home 24/7 and not only the impact that it has on water and sewer, but also on other utilities, it's, people are at home. And as quickly as the pandemic shut things off and put people in that position, it's not going to be a switch that turns it back on. So I very much agree with the sense that September, October is the right time to relook at that, because while things have opened up, people are not, it's going to take time to reacclimate and get back to whatever the difference and the new normal is. I can speak for my industry and my company, where we're a software company, and we've looked at the impact of the pandemic in the workforce, and the result of that is a lot of that's going to change, and there's going to be a lot more remote work from home versus being in the office 5 days a week. And I think that's a reality of what is going to come of this. So I think we do need to pay attention to what's going to happen there. But, as I would see it, I think there's probably going to be more at-home activity, less commercial activity. Let's see what, when things truly things have started to open up, but let it soak in and then see what happens in the fall. So I very much agree with leaving things status quo and then looking at it in the fall and seeing how people are adapting and changing their habits and lifestyle.
Dave, make sure I'm not muted. Good. Have we know, or we believe we know what our costs are going to be for the upcoming fiscal year. Have you taken the average volume in each of the steps that we've had for the years prior to the last 9 months, this fiscal year, and multiply that times the current rates to get some idea of what the shortfall of meeting the costs are going to be if we don't have an increase for this year? And, or the other thing is, how much of an increase we're going to need if we only have 9 months worth of time to have a step up in the rates to try to recapture those. And we're going to miss the irrigation system by not increasing rates sooner. I'm just trying to balance costs and revenue. And even though it's not going to be meaningful for me because I'm going to be a Florida resident by the time this all goes into effect. But I think that the town needs to make sure that we have a balanced budget as far as these enterprise funds go. And we deferred the 2.3% increase for all of this fiscal year because of not knowing where things are going to go. And now we are saying, let's defer it again. I'm just very concerned about it becoming much more of an issue when we realize we have to start putting in an increase and people start looking at 4 and 5% increases in their steps.
David, I have the same concerns or in questions.
And those are good points. That's partly why I'm thinking September is probably as long as we can wait if we need to adjust rates. And just as a reminder, it was about a 2.7% increase that we did not implement last year. Last year meaning the year that we're in, and the plan was looking at another 2.7 for 22. So right now, the rates that I was showing you were in the 5% range. What I am looking at and believe comfortably that that the rates may not need to go up that amount. And with the short year of 9 months, I had taken that into account in my analysis of waiting until that period. But it's very important because my concern is that we need to have a solid number on what's going on in the commercial sector. Because if we to have a rate increase, you need to get it right. Because you don't want to come right back and say, oops, 3 months later, we did not anticipate this, that the revenue drop in the commercial sector was even worse, and now we have to have another rate increase. So I'm doing this and making this recommendation so we go forward with a plan that will work better for the town, and the select board can have faith that it's a system that can work for another 18 months.
I mean, the commercial sector is not going to come back until fourth quarter. The third quarter is reacclimation. Fourth quarter is when you may see it come back. That's my opinion.
That's understood. We do have some industries, some water uses that just were non-existent that should improve in the education sector and in the restaurant industries, because that's where some of our biggest drop-offs were, because there's just more water use when patrons are in the restaurant than when they're doing takeout. So those were a couple of factors. Office buildings and stuff, I certainly think that's going to be a much slower comeback, but they ironically did not use as much of the water as those sort of retail and people-oriented commercial establishments.
David, for that 3-month window, so we're talking
Most
about,
of it was restaurants, wasn't it?
we're talking about July, August, and September. What are your assumptions then in terms of consumption on the commercial and residential side, just for that window, that window where we're waiting for more information? What are you assuming?
I'm hoping to see the restaurant industry to be back up at the volume that they were at historically for the last couple of fiscal years. The other important factor is the hospitality industry. We have 3 hotels, which were one was shut down basically, and they're looking to make a comeback to reopen. And the other two were very limited capacity, but they're saying that their usage will be at least at the 50% occupancy rate. So seeing basically a 3-time increase in their billable usage that won't be at the level that they were a couple of years ago, but certainly much better than the 10% usage. So those are some of the factors we're looking at. The other thing is how much I anticipate residential use will decline at some portion, but I also agree. I mean, some industries have found that work from home works, and that there is going to be a percentage. And Needham, of course, is a higher end white collar professional community. So the ability to work from home is greater in this community. So I anticipate there's going to be some uptick, but I also anticipate the volume of water overall will decline. The 9 months at this time, a year from now, the first 9 months of 22 for residential use, I expect will be lower than it was for 2021.
I mean, in terms of, I guess I'm thinking commercial usage, you know, you're gonna have the fall, you're gonna have schools back in, and Needham is a place where those hotels capacity is gonna be filled up. There's gonna, I just see a lot more uptick there. And I see the, like I said before, the residential usage. I don't think that's going to drop as much as we may think it will be. I think some of that is here to stay. Maybe it's 50%, or I don't know, but
I'm kind of on board with John on his analysis. That I do think that a lot of the commercial water was driven by the restaurant trade and the hotel trade. That's going to come back a lot quicker. The office buildings were never a huge issue with that in town. I do think that the home usage will stay higher than it has been in the past. And, you know, we're all frankly just guessing, but, you know, it is what it is.
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you this. My company's 5,000 people, offices all over the place, and shut down Boston, shut down San Francisco. The work from home model works, and the company saves millions and millions of dollars. And I think you're going to see tech companies kind of following that, and Needham is full of tech employees because of its proximity. So I think that's going to be somewhat of a trend, but that's one person's opinion.
And the extra.
That's two, John. I'm kind of with you on that.
Yeah, I'll tell you, talking to some people that prior to the pandemic used to do a lot of traveling for meetings, have said, you know, we're not traveling to Boston or New York or San Francisco anymore. We found out that we can have virtual meetings, and you don't have to get on an airplane and go book a hotel room and be someplace. So the economy is going to definitely be different after this pandemic, because I think a lot of people have seen ways to economize on the way they operate, and you're going to see less business use of hotels and restaurants.
But that'll be picked up by, I think, pleasure, consumer, you know, the schools in the areas. But you know, I agree with that. I mean, my job was 50% travel. I haven't been on a work plane or a work trip since March of 2020.
Yeah.
it's entirely, I mean, it's an opportunity for businesses that, but I think I think on the other side of that, it's gonna fuel more of the, more of like the, just travel for, for colleges or whatever. So.
Time will tell.
And by the way, if the consumption remains higher at the residential rate, it doesn't decline as much. That is not a bad thing. The key is if we get some recovery in the commercial sector.
Yeah.
And then in Needham's, just its mix of the commercial sector, I think we're in a little better place than some communities in the area will be. So as I think we got a better picture to look at, and that's truly my thought. So to come into the select board with a rate system that will work for 18 months or more.
I don't believe that requires us to make any vote or anything else, or just to say that we're going to continue to monitor it.
That's correct.
Yeah.
And with that, I'm asking the folks' availability either to meet on the 9th of September or the 23rd of September. I did look at the calendar. There is on the assumption that folks will want to meet on a Thursday, and I anticipate that will be an in-person meeting, which means a later start time to allow folks an opportunity to get here. But the 16th is Yom Kippur, so I know we would not be able to have a public meeting on that day. So looking at the 9th and the 23rd, if those are good dates for the committee members.
Yeah, I wish you all well. I'll be in Florida by that point, and no longer a resident of the town of Needham, so I couldn't be on this committee. So,
Yes, yeah.
yeah, well, it's been a great number of years here. I've really enjoyed it, on what I've done in the town, and but it's time.
Really nice to have gotten to meet you, Steve.
Yeah, it's time to move on. So, I'm gonna the select board will have to appoint another person to this committee.
Yeah, I'm good with either of those days.
Harold?
Same here. Both days work for me right now.
Okay. Mr. Chair?
I'm fine, Dave. You know that.
So, okay. And
It's a little, Dave, it's a little bit of an ordeal for me being the third Thursday because I have the MWRA meeting in the morning at like 10 o'clock. So I guess if I had a preference, it would be September 9th.
well, the third Thursday will be the 16th.
Okay. They'll move it. They'll move it as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so I will send out an invite for the 9th to get it in, and a tentative for the 23rd to get it into your calendars. At this point, the state of emergency, as the chair read, ends on June 15th, and unless there's a change to the law, the only way meetings can be held will be in person, publicly accessible. So I would be reserving space for the committee here at Town Hall. Should I assume a 7 p.m. start? Yes.
Good for me. Yeah.
Yep,
Fine.
absolutely.
Okay. And with that, that's all that I have for the committee. And
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Need to take a roll call vote, John,
Aye.
Stephen.
Aye.
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 Thank you. So we are adjourned.